Hi everyone, welcome back to Evelyn and Peter. I'm Rachel and today I have a really fun crochet summer tee for you guys. So this is what it looks like. We're gonna ignore the wrinkles. I just recently took photos with it and I actually kind of tied it up here in the corner for a different look with it. So that's why it's all wrinkly, so just ignore that. But it has a wide boat neck. I wanted you to be able to wear it on both shoulders, but then also be able to kind of pull it to one side and have one shoulder out, like a little off the shoulder look. It was really cute, tied up in the corner. And I have photos of that at the end of the video if you want to see. And then of course on my blog as well. But this shirt is worked from the bottom up and we use extended single crochet throughout the pattern. So it's really easy. There's barely any shaping right up here at the neckline. And then of course the sleeves are added last, worked in the round. So minimal seaming. You'll have some seaming to do right here on both shoulders. And then just on the sides here from the bottom of the sleeve down to the hem. So really fun and easy to make. I used Lion Brand's Oh Baby Organic Cotton and I just used the color Rose. All the specific yardage that you need for this pattern is on my blog. Everything's free on my blog, the pattern and everything. So I made the size small. If you want to go off of kind of see what it looks on a body, this is the size small and I'm wearing it in all the photos. It's a bit oversized for more of a loose, comfy fit. And it's also, I wouldn't say super cropped, but it is on the shorter side. So if you like shirts that go further, like past your hips, I recommend adding some rows in. And you can just do that right before you split for the neckline and do these decreases. You can just add as many rows as you want. Just take into account you'll need more yarn for that as well. This shirt is also available as a, ignore my dog in the background. He's always so annoying in all my videos. I'm so sorry. This shirt is also available as a kit on lionbrand.com. So it comes with all the yarn you need plus the PDF pattern to make your tee. And then I, of course, have the PDF in my Etsy and Ravelry shops. And then this tutorial video along with the free blog pattern on EvelynAndPeter.com, and I'll have all that linked in the description for you guys. And then one more thing that I wanted to note before you get started in this video, I did the video while making the shirt going along with it. So sometimes when I make change some design elements to it or make a mistake and have to go back or just change something up, it's not recorded. So I ended up adding a couple more extra rows just right here at the shoulders before tying off. And I note that in the voiceover, so I'll let you know in the voiceover at that point. It's not shown how many, I have less rows in the video than what I actually did in the pattern. But I let you know where it happens in the video so you can be sure to add those rows. So I ended up wanting the neckline to be a little bit bigger than what I originally had. So if you see me working on it and notice that I have a couple less rows than what the pattern calls for, that is why, because I went back and added them. So that is pretty much it. I'm trying to make sure I didn't forget anything. It's really easy to do, really fun, and I hope you guys like it. And then again, I'll have everything linked in the description. If you have any questions or comments, just let me know and I'll be sure to answer them. So I hope you guys like it.
So to get started, you're going to need some fine weight yarn, which is just a weight of 2, and I'm using Lion Brand's Oh Baby Organic Cotton in the color Rose. And then you're also going to need a 3.5 millimeter crochet hook, a yarn needle to weave in ends, and then I also recommend some stitch markers to create the sleeves. So to start off, we're going to make a slip knot. So wrap the yarn around your fingers and then grab that yarn and pull it through the loop. And then just insert your hook and pull down tight to secure. And we're going to be beginning with a foundation row. So we will not be making a chain row. We'll just be making a foundation row. So chain 2. And then in that very first chain that you made, you're going to insert your hook into the back bump. and then yarn over your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over your hook, pull through the first loop, yarn over your hook, and pull through both loops on your hook. And that is one single crochet foundation stitch. And then do that again. Insert your hook into the bottom of the first stitch that you just made, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through one loop, yarn over, pull through two. That's our second one. And then again, insert your hook into that previous stitch at the bottom. You can see it creates a little V. That's where we are inserting our hook. And then just yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through one loop, yarn over, pull through two. So these are our foundation single crochet stitches, and it's basically just a combination of making a starting chain and your first row of single crochet. And when you rotate it, you can see along the bottom that it's making little V's, and that's where we're putting our hook to create the next stitch. So again, you can rotate your work, insert your hook into the V, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through one loop, yarn over, pull through two. And I also have a separate video teaching you how to do this foundation single crochet stitch if you need a little bit more practice. But you're just going to continue doing this until you have the correct amount of stitches for the size that you're making. So again, make sure you're following along with the written pattern for your size so you can double check your stitch count. If you're following along with the size small, which is what I'm making, you will be working up 92 foundation single crochet. But again, just double check the written pattern and make sure you are making the correct amount for your size. Okay, and once you have made the correct amount of stitches for your size, we're going to chain one and then turn our work, and that is row one complete. And for row two, we're just going to be inserting our hook into that very first stitch from the row below. Insert it under both the front and back loop, yarn over your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through one loop on your hook, and yarn over, pull through both loops. This is an extended single crochet stitch. So again, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through one, and then yarn over, pull through two. So this is just like a regular single crochet stitch, except right here we're doing an extra yarn over and pulling through, so kind of like making a chain within the stitch. So again, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through one, yarn over, pull through two. And you're just going to do this all the way down the row. So you'll be working one extended single crochet stitch for every single stitch. And when you get to the end of the row, your stitch count will be the same. You should still be at the same stitch count from row one. So for my size small, I had 92 stitches in row one, so I'll still have 92 stitches in row two as well. So just do this all the way across the row until you get to the end. Okay, so now I've completed row two and I'm at the end of the row. And to start off row three, you're just going to chain one and turn your work. And then row three is just going to be exactly the same. We're just going to be working one extended single crochet stitch for every single stitch from the row below. So work your first extended single crochet into the first stitch and just continue on with one stitch per stitch. Your stitch count will stay the same. You won't be increasing or decreasing. So every few rows, I recommend at least counting your stitches and making sure that you didn't accidentally miss one. You should always have the same stitch count at this point. And you're just going to continue doing this, working your extended single crochets across. When you get to the end of the row, chain one and turn, and just repeat this row until you have the correct amount of rows for your size. So again, you'll want to refer to the pattern and make sure you are doing the correct amount for your size. I'm making a size small, and I will be back here and meet you after I have 78 rows complete. Okay, and then once you have the correct amount of rows for your back panel, you want to repeat the same exact process for your front panel. So you can go ahead and tie off the back panel, just yarn over, pull through, and cut your yarn. And now you need to go back and you can rewatch the portion of the video that you just watched for the back panel and do the same thing for the front panel. So you're going to repeat rows 1 through 70 of the back panel if you're making a size small. So you should make 70 rows of just extended single crochet. An extra small is 68 rows. A medium is 72. So just go ahead and look at the pattern and repeat the same exact thing. And then I will meet you back here and show you how to do the neckline and the decrease area of the front panel. Okay, so at this point you should have your back panel complete, and now we are on the front panel, which was just a repeat of the back panel. So I have rows 1 through 70 completed here for the front panel. Again, depending your size, you're going to have different amount of rows. So 68, 70, 72, 74, just depending on your size. So make sure you check. And now we will be doing our first shoulder, or the splitting of the neckline. So to do this, you're going to continue like you have been. This is row 71 for the size small. But instead of working all the way across the row, we are only going to be working 24 extended single crochet and then stopping and turning. So follow the correct amount of stitches for your size. For the size small, it's 24. So after you work the correct amount of stitches that you need for your size, we're going to stop and we're going to chain 1 and turn our work. So now we only worked partially across. And for this next row, we need to make a decrease. So you can see the first 2 stitches here. Insert your hook into the first stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1 loop. Insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1 loop, and then yarn over, pull through all your loops. And that is 1 decrease, or 1 extended single crochet 2 together. And you're going to do that on the first 2 stitches. And then the remaining stitches, you'll just be working 1 extended single crochet stitch across until you get to the end. And when you get to the end of the row, just chain 1 and turn your work. So this starts off row 73 for the size small. Just work your extended single crochet as usual, 1 stitch per stitch until you get to the last 2 stitches of this row, and then we will be working another decrease. So go ahead and work across, and then when you get to the end here, work another decrease. So the same thing as before, we're going to just decrease those 2 stitches into 1. So our stitch count is going down. With every decrease that we make, we go down by 1 stitch. So decrease those last 2, chain 1 and turn. And then again, in the first 2 stitches here, you will make another decrease. So this starts off row 74. And you are just repeating the same thing, decrease, and then work 1 extended single crochet in every stitch across to the end. And now this starts row 75 for the size small. So again, just chain 1 and work 1 extended single crochet in every single stitch across until you get to the last 2 of this row, and then we will be working another decrease stitch. So go ahead and work 1 stitch across. And then when we get to the end, just work another extended single crochet 2 together. So we're just decreasing these last 2 stitches. Then chain 1 and turn your work. And now in this recording, I have it showing that I only do 1 row of working extended single crochet across. So for this row, which is row 76 for the size small, there's no more decreasing. You're just going to work 1 in every stitch across. But instead of tying off right here like I am showing you, I ended up going back and adding 2 more rows. So go back and add 2 more rows after this. So do not cut off at this point. I do not show working the 2 rows, but you need to add 2 more rows. Just work 1 stitch in every stitch across, down and back. And then you can go ahead and tie off. So there's 2 more rows that I ended up going back and doing, but I just did not film it. It was after the trying on and seeing that I wanted it a bit longer. So make sure you do that. And then again, depending on your size, your row count will be different anyways. So you need to ultimately make sure you're following along with the written pattern. Okay, now we're going to be starting the opposite shoulder. So you can go ahead and make a slip knot and then insert your hook and lay your panel out in front of you. Have your finished shoulder on the right hand side, and we're going to be attaching our yarn to the correct stitch. So depending on what size you made, you need to count the correct stitches inwards towards the center of your shirt.
So for the size small, we had 24 stitches for this row on the opposite side. So you want to count 24 stitches in and then insert your hook into that 24th stitch, yarn over and just pull through the stitch and pull through the loop on your hook and then chain 1. And now you can just insert your hook back into that same stitch, work 1 extended single crochet and work 1 extended single crochet in every stitch across this row. So make sure you're counting the correct amount of stitches in depending on the size that you made. So it could be 20, 24, 28, 33. Totally just depends on your size. And then when you get to the end of the row, chain 1 and turn your work. And for this row, these following rows are going to be the exact same as the other shoulder, just flipped or opposite because it's on the opposite side. So you can chain 1 and work 1 extended single crochet into every single stitch until we get to these last 2 stitches. And when we get to the last 2 stitches, we're just going to be decreasing together like we have been before. So just work an extended single crochet 2 together in the last 2 stitches of this row. So work your decrease and then chain 1 and turn. And now we're starting row 73 of the opposite shoulder on the front panel. For this one, just work the first 2 stitches together. So we're going to be doing an extended single crochet 2 together. Ignore me fixing my yarn. So in those first 2 stitches, work your decrease. And then after that, you can just work 1 extended single crochet for every single stitch across until you get to the end of the row. Okay, and then when you get to the end of the row, just chain 1 and turn. And now we're starting off row 74, which is the same thing. Just work 1 extended single crochet into every single stitch until we get to these last 2 stitches. And then when you get to the last 2 stitches, just decrease together. And then chain 1 and turn your work. And this starts off row 75, which is, we're just repeating again, decrease those first 2 stitches together, and then work 1 extended single crochet into every single remaining stitch across. And then after that will be the same thing as the other shoulder. You're going to chain 1, turn your work, and then you can work the next 3 rows just doing an extended single crochet into every single stitch. So no more decreasing, you're just going to chain 1, work your 3 rows, and again, I didn't film those last 2 rows, so I've worked across here, but you need to go down and back 1 more time for 2 more extra rows as in the written pattern, and depending on your size, it could be slightly different. I was making this in real time during this video, so I ended up having to go make a couple changes, which is normal in designing. So just make sure you have the correct amount of rows made, and then you can tie off. And as you can see, I'm tying off plenty of extra yarn. We want a long tail so that we can use that tail to seam the shoulders together. So we'll be using this tail to seam both sides onto the back panel. So you should have both the front panel and back panel complete, and then I will show you guys how to join everything together. So at this point, we're going to seam our front and back panel together at the shoulders. And to do that, you want to place your 2 panels right side facing together. So sandwich them together, and the right sides of your panels should be facing each other and touching each other. And the right side on this pattern is row 1 of both the front and back panel. So you're looking at the front of row 1 and you place that together with the front of row 1 on the other panel. And then we're going to be sewing the shoulders together. I like to use the tail of yarn that I left on the front panel for the shoulder, and I also just like to use my hook and slip stitch across. But you can do however you are used to doing this or how you prefer to do it. A lot of people use a yarn needle and just mattress stitch across, or whichever stitch they prefer. But I like to use my hook
So you can go ahead and put your hook in the very first stitch of the back panel and the very first stitch of the front panel, and then just yarn over and pull through both panels. So you can see again, inserting it into the second stitch of both panels, and then yarn over, pull through those panels and pull through the loop on your hook. Again with the third stitch and the third stitch. And you're going to do this all the way across. So make sure that you're not skipping any stitches and that they are lined up correctly. So stitch 4 with stitch 4, stitch 5 with stitch 5. And just do this across until you are done slip stitching just that first shoulder. So however many stitches you have left at the shoulder section of the front panel. So once you reach that last stitch right there, you can just tie off your work. I ended up having lots of leftover yarn on the tail of my yarn. So you can just yarn over, pull through, and then just cut your yarn. And then we're going to repeat the same process on the other side for the other shoulder. And then, of course, since this one is opposite, you can see that your tail of yarn is on the inner side towards the neckline of your shirt. So what you want to do is just count over on your back panel and make sure you're counting in the correct number of stitches. So depending on however many stitches you had on your very final row of that front panel shoulder, you want to count over the same amount of stitches, and that's where you will begin to slip stitch together, just so it's not, you just want to make sure everything's lined up correctly and that you have 1 stitch per stitch. So just count it correctly and then insert your hook. That way we know it's lined up with that very first stitch on the opposite shoulder right there. And then you're just going to do the same exact thing, yarn over and pull through both the front and back panel. And then you're just going to slip stitch across for this one as well. So your second stitch with your second stitch, third with your third. Just yarn over, pull through both panels, and pull through the loop on your hook, and do this all the way across. And then when you get to the end, you can just yarn over and pull through and tie off your work. So now we have both shoulder seams complete, and you can see we created our neck opening. And now we're going to be doing the same thing, but along the sides of your top. So again, make sure your right sides are facing each other and your shirt is wrong side out. And now we're going to be seaming the sides together, but leaving a hole on both sides for the arms. Okay, so you're going to need a measuring tape for this portion, and we're going to measure out the armhole depth of our sleeves. So just lay your shirt out in front of you, right sides facing. Make sure everything is smoothed out. There's no wrinkles or anything like that. And then you can just take your measuring tape and place it at the top of the shoulder seam where we just joined. It doesn't matter, you can start on either side. And you're just going to place it starting at the shoulder seam and measure down until you have the correct amount of inches for your size. For the size small, we want to measure out 7 inches. And then we know that's our armhole, and we're going to take our stitch marker and place it right at the 7-inch mark. It does not have to be perfect. If you are off just by a tiny bit, the one thing you'll want to make sure is that your front and back panel are lined up correctly, so that when you place that stitch marker, it's going through the same row on both panels. That way everything is even and straight and not bunched up. And then you're going to do the same thing on the other side. You can either find that row where your stitch marker is located, or use the measuring tape again and measure down the same amount of inches. For every size, it's going to be slightly different. I think I had it written so that an extra small is 6.5, a small is 7, a medium is 7.5. So just go up 1/2 inch depending on your size, and then just measure it out. Place your stitch marker. Again, make sure your rows are even. And then you'll just want to double check and make sure that your stitch marker is on the same row on both sides of your shirt and on both the front and back panel. So go ahead and double check that and make sure everything is lined up evenly. And once you have everything measured out, we're going to seam from the bottom hem up to where we placed our stitch marker. So just create another slip knot with your yarn, insert your hook, pull tight to secure. And then we're going to join our yarn at the bottom hem. It doesn't matter which side you're on. Both sides are going to get done. So just insert it in the very bottom corner, at the very bottom row of both panels. And then just yarn over and pull through both the panels and through that loop on your hook. So it's just like what we did at the shoulder seams. We're just going to be slip stitching up the side of the shirt. When you're slip stitching, make sure you're not pulling anything too tightly. You don't want anything bunched up. And every couple of slip stitches, make sure that your rows are lined up correctly, because unlike the shoulder seam where we had stitches to work into, now we just have the sides of the rows to work into. So it can be a little bit more tricky. But I promise that it is not super important where you put your hook, wherever feels most comfortable to you. You can see I'm just kind of putting it where it goes in nicely and just making sure that your rows are even. So row 1 will slip stitch together with row 1 on the other panel, row 2 with row 2. And just do this all the way up the side of your shirt until you get to the stitch marker. Once you get to the stitch marker, just tie off and repeat the same exact thing on the other side. Okay, so now you should have both sides seamed up and both shoulders seamed up. And now I've turned my shirt correct side out, so now the wrong sides are facing and the right sides are on the outside of the shirt. Our seams are nice and hidden away on the inside. And now we're just going to add the sleeves. So begin with a slip knot. And then we're just going to join our yarn at the bottom side seam or the bottom of the seam of the arm opening. I like to join mine just right to the left of it. So you can just insert your hook right to the left of that seam, join with a slip stitch, and then chain 1. And then in that same place where you joined, you're going to work an extended single crochet. And then you're just going to continue working the extended single crochets all the way around the opening of the shirt. So for this portion, again, you're going to be working your stitch into the side of the rows. There's not a stitch that you're working into. You're just working into the sides of the rows of the front and back panel. So wherever feels most comfortable for you is where you should be putting your hook. If you work a stitch and you think that there's too big of a gap, you can just take out your hook and pull that stitch out and rework it wherever it looks best. And the stitch count is also not super important here. You just don't want to do too many stitches and then your sleeve will look wavy. And if you do too little stitches, it'll pucker and bunch your sleeve up. So you kind of want them to just be nice and flat and even like this. And you just want to do it all the way around the opening of your sleeve. So again, the stitch count is not too important, just wherever you think looks nice, and just do this all the way around the opening. When you get to this top seam, just continue all the way around until your first stitch that you made. Okay, and then when you reach back around to the beginning, you're going to be joining to that first stitch that you made. So just insert your hook into that very first extended single crochet that you worked. And then yarn over and just slip stitch to join. So pull through the stitch and the loop on your hook and then chain 1 and turn your work. So we're going to be working in turned rounds. So after you turn your work, you're just going to be working 1 extended single crochet into every stitch of the previous round. So just work your extended single crochets all the way around. 1 stitch for every stitch of the previous round, so your stitch count won't change. And when you get to the end of the round, you're just going to, again, insert your hook into that first stitch of the round, and then yarn over and pull through, slip stitching to join. And then you can just chain 1 and turn your work again. So now we're starting round 3. And round 3 is going to be the same exact thing, just going to be working 1 extended single crochet for every single stitch all the way around. And then when you get back to the beginning of the round, once again, just insert your hook into that first stitch, slip stitching to join, chain 1, turn your work, and then do the same exact thing, work 1 extended single crochet for every single stitch all the way back around. And you can actually do this for as many rounds as you would like, depending on the length of sleeves that you want. I ended up doing 6 rounds so that I could fold a nice little cuff on my sleeves. I think these sleeves look super cute when they're cuffed over, but you can do as few or as many as you would like. So just continue the same process. When you get back to the beginning, you can join with a slip stitch, chain 1 and turn, and do as many rounds as you want, but I have it written in the pattern to do 6 rounds. And once you're finished with that first sleeve, do the exact same thing on the opposite side. Just make sure you have the same stitch count as the first sleeve. You'll want to keep them even. So after you complete both sleeves, you can just yarn over and pull through and tie off your work. You can see what it looks like cuffed up like that. You could also go longer if you wanted. And once you have the sleeves done, now we're going to be just doing the neckline trim, which is super simple. So again, just make a slip knot, insert your hook, and now we're going to be joining our yarn to the neckline of the top. So your top should still be correct side out. And I like to join next to the seam whenever I join in to work my trim. So I'm just joining to that shoulder seam right to the left of it, slip stitching through the panel and through the loop on my hook to join, and then chaining 1. And in that same space, you're just going to be working your first stitch. For the neckline trim, we're just doing regular single crochet. So you're just inserting your hook, yarning over and pulling up a loop, and then yarning over, pulling through 2 loops. So you're just going to do that down the side of those decreased rows of your front panel. And since you're working into the side of the rows, there's no particular stitch you're working into. You're just working into the side of the rows, wherever looks good and wherever it feels most comfortable to insert your hook. At this portion, again, your stitch count is not important. You'll just want to make sure that everything looks even. And then once you get to the panel area where it has the actual stitches to work into, then you just work 1 single crochet per stitch. And then you can just do this all the way around the neckline. So continue across the front here. And just keep going all the way around until you reach back to the beginning where you joined and made your first stitch. And when you get back to the beginning, just insert your hook into your first stitch made, yarn over, and just slip stitch to join. And then you can just yarn over and pull through a loop and tie off your yarn, and that completes the neckline. And the only thing you have left to do now is weave in all of your ends. So you're going to need your yarn needle. And when you're weaving in your ends, you'll want to make sure that all those little ends that you have from joining new yarn or whatever it is, whatever's sticking on the outside, you'll want to pull through to the inside of your shirt when you're weaving in. So I just recommend turning your shirt correct wrong side out and then weaving in those ends and hiding them. So just go ahead and thread whatever yarn that you want to start with through your yarn needle. And then you're just going to take it and kind of, if it's on the outside, pull it through to the inside to help hide it a bit more. And then you're just going to weave it back and forth a couple of times through the stitches, just like this. So you'll just want to do it down one way, and then you can pull the needle all the way through, and when you're working your way back the other way, make sure you insert your needle through a different area than what you pulled it out from. And you can do this just 2 or 3 times, whatever you're most comfortable with. So I've pulled it one way. Make sure you're not pulling too tightly so it doesn't pucker your top. You can kind of stretch the stitches out afterwards and make sure that nothing's tugging. Pull it back the other way. So I like to do this just 2 or 3 times, whatever I think looks good. And then you can just cut your yarn and repeat that with every single end that you have hanging out. And that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed this pattern. Thank you guys so much for watching, and let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and I'll be sure to answer them, and I will see you guys next time with the next pattern.